Okay, now we're set to go. This will be another one of those evenings wherein you will not be able to see me, which is probably a blessing. Now, first a few minutes to discuss what we're doing. This is a course in AstroDynamics, which means how astrology changes with time. We're trying to zero in on hot periods and periods when events are likely. And what we began with was a study of segments of life. We looked at life in halves. That is the first half of life and the second half of life. We looked at astrological rulerships of that, but we said this is not too much that you can use for practical astrology using a horoscope. We also looked at thirds of life and we looked at quarters of life. We have one more such division to look at, which is much more usable, but we're going to do that the next time. What we then shifted to were means of determining periods of time. And we began looking at transits, because that is what most people are familiar with. Transits are the positions in the heavens at the moment relative to the horoscope at the moment that was the time of birth. And we noted that the outer planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are the only ones that one should really look at with transits, because the inner planets, the transits are so momentary, they might just be in effect for less than a day. So we looked at them. The next thing we looked at were secondary progressions. And secondary progressions are the next most popular means of studying astrology. They are where time is telescoped such that each day after birth represents 1 year after birth. And this means that, for example, we looked for the progressions mostly with the inner planets. That is with Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars. Occasionally you find an outer planet progression, but that's a rare case and it's important when it does happen. And the moon. The progressions of the moon last about a month. But suppose we have a solar progression, say the sun comes conjoined to natal Jupiter. That will last about 3 years. It is a year and a half or a degree and a half applying and a degree and a half separating. And since a degree every year, that's a 3-year period. The next thing we looked at after that were primary directions. Our friend Rick gave us a talk on primary directions, but he gave us so much information so fast that it didn't work out. It was too much. There's a lot of information. If you want to go back and study that video again, it's available and you should be able to gain a lot of information. And what we have done with this is we have taken the charts of all of the presidents that I have lived under during my lifetime. And they are from FDR all the way up to Joe Biden. And the first thing we looked at is to see at their inaugurations, we looked to see if there were significant transits. And we were pretty much disappointed because There weren't any special, in most cases, there weren't any special transits present at all at the time of inauguration. So we looked at the progressions at the time of inauguration, and we didn't find much there also. And we were left with that, with several possible reasons for it. One is that maybe astrology doesn't work. And that's always something that we have to keep in mind. Astrology as we know it is very little relative to all time and all the things that happen. Being able to astrologically see the times is not an easy thing to do. So we decided that was possible, or we decided the other major reason for this is that the inaugurations weren't important times for the people in question. Now that would seem absurd, that being inaugurated president wasn't a really important time. But when we're looking at astrology, we're looking at character development. And some seemingly trivial times are very important to character development. And some events define character very strongly. So that is the possibility that we looked at. So in order to determine whether astrology was true and to take some important events that seem to have importance in the president's lives is what we've been doing. And this is the third session of doing this. And we're down to the last four presidents: President Bush, President Obama, President I must have some kind of a mental block against him. President Trump, who will again be president, and finally President Biden. So what I have done is I've taken what appear to be important times in their lives, and we're looking at them astrology. Now, no preference has been expressed about doing these last four. What happened is before doing this class, the last time we met, I said, do you want to do those last four presidents or not? And I said that whoever wrote in to the address that is shown on the screen right now, I would take a vote. And as it is, nobody expressed really a preference. So we're doing the last four just for the sake of follow-through. I've studied a lot of psychology as well as spiritual philosophy and astrology, and especially in psychology, follow-through is important. Unless it's something extremely obvious, what you start, you should finish. It's healthy psychologically. Sigmund Freud was sex-oriented, and he said that coitus interruptus produces neurosis. Now that was the extreme case, because interrupting sexual performance is certainly a jarring event, and that's likely to produce neurosis. Carl Jung and other psychologists have found that not following through on all sorts of things produces neurosis. And so we're going to follow through and do those last four presidents tonight. Now, one person did write in and asked for analysis or astrological discussion on current political events. And that's too much right now, Perhaps sometime we'll do that, and we'll do that in terms of astrological cycles. When we come to that section of astrodynamics, we'll look a little bit historically at political events. I don't know that I want to do a lot of that because I'm not sure of the importance of I'm not sure that of the importance of it all. All right, now let's begin to look at presidents' charts. First, we'll get things started here. All right, this is the first chart we're looking at. This is oops, all right. This is the horoscope of George W. Bush, known basically as W. We'll look at, let's look at some things. The center chart is the natal chart. The progressions are the intermediary chart, and the outer chart is the transits. If we look at the center chart, we find that the sun is in the 12th house, and it's square to Jupiter. And it wasn't known. Most of the world doesn't know it because his presidency was taken very seriously, but in much of his life he was a good time boy. He liked to party, and he liked to drink, and some say even take cocaine. And if we look at Venus, we see that Venus is also sextile to Jupiter. All right, here's Jupiter, here's Venus. There's a sextile between them. And we see that that's reinforcing somebody that is an upbeat type of person. And he has proven to be that even after office. In fact, that gets into his love of doing painting and things like that. The thing we probably know him for most is the conjunction of Mercury and Pluto in the first house. And that's dumbfounding kind of experiences that make a person have, what some people call brain farts. The gentle way of saying it for George W. Bush was he had a lot of non sequiturs that he would speak. He would try to say something, and being an emotional person, emotional people have trouble with oratory in the first place, and then having this conjunction of Pluto and Mercury, he would blurt things out that the words didn't say what he meant. Let's see, I got to make sure I got things right. Saturn is in the 12th house, and it is square to the moon in the 4th house. And this is what I think has most to do with his conservatism. The 4th house is the house of family and heredity, and there is you might almost say that he had a hereditary conservatism, and to some extent he was probably even a mama's boy and was protected in that way. Barbara Bush was very protective of all of her sons, and so that probably defines his character. All right, now we want to see the date that we have chosen was 9/11, because he was president during 9/11, and we want to see whether astrology is true. If we look at this, the progressed sun is down here in the second house, and it is approaching the Mars in the second house. And Sun conjoined Mars is violent, but this is only applying. So you can't say that this is really an event-driven thing. As the Sun progressed forward and did come over Mars is when he had the second Iraq War, and he had Afghanistan to deal with. So this is not an approving kind of event. But if we look at progressed Mars is here down here in Libra, and it is almost exactly square to his natal sun, and that is an emergency aspect. That is to say that this is quite convincing. Neptune is opposite the ascendant by transit, and that's quite strong, and indicating that, he was dazed and confused. There are still videos showing that how he was teaching little children when somebody came in and whispered in his ear that 9/11 had happened, and he was dumbfounded. And what did he do? He went back to teaching the little children. And that's the kind of thing the kind of psychological condition that you expect with Neptune being opposite the ascendant. Now Venus happens to be on the day of this event. Venus happens to be opposite. Uranus happens to be opposite to Venus. Here's the natal Venus and Uranus, and I don't know what that means. I don't know whether that is a proving event or not. So looking at the Neptune transit and looking at the Mars progression, this does seem to vindicate astrology being true to reality. All right. Now let's look at the next horoscope. All right, this is Barack Obama. I don't know, I don't really understand the horoscope of Barack Obama. I have to admit that. I have pondered it. Let's see here. I have pondered it, and there are things to consider in it. Now, I'm not absolutely sure that this is the exact right birth time, because if we look at the sun forms almost no aspects. It forms a very weak and separating trine with Neptune. So he is misunderstood, he's probably deceptive, but this doesn't describe him, because he's a very outward man, and he is a very positive type of person. He got elected and re-elected, and that they would expect more charisma. So what I expect with this chart is that the sun was, the birth time was probably a little earlier, and that the sun was exactly opposite the ascendant, which would make him a very shining type of person. Now, very often when you are given birth charts, the time is given as an exact hour or a major division of an hour. It'll say 10:30 or it'll say 11 o'clock. You can't trust that because that's when it was written down. You don't know that that's when the exact birth had happened. In most cases, the birth is a little earlier than is written on the birth certificate. Unless you have parents that are there, like you have a father at the birth, and he sees the first child take the first breath, and he's there with a watch and he can get the exact time. That's different than if the nurse who was presiding over the birth 5 minutes after the birth writes it down when she looks at her watch. So the fact that Barack Obama was probably born a little earlier than this makes a lot of sense. The Mercury opposite Jupiter in the natal horoscope. Here's Mercury. It's opposite Jupiter. And that represents his extreme generosity and probably his extreme liberality. This is a give the benefit of doubt to the people. And Mercury also is sextile to the moon. The moon is down here in the 4th house, Mercury sextile. So this is clearly quite a valuable type of person. He's fluent and he can do a lot of speaking. One other interest in here, Saturn forms a fairly strong trine to Mars. And Saturn-Mars aspects, all of them, but especially the benefic aspects, are mechanical. But that's a rough word to use. I find that people who have Mars trine Saturn, for example, know how to get things done. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the life of Barack Obama, so I just chose what would appear to be an important time in life, and that is when the ACA was enacted into law. That is the Affordable Care Act. Now, as an astrologer, you have a difficult question here. Was that when it was voted in, or was that when it was signed into effect? Finding the exact time of an event of that nature is not easy to do. So let's look at things. The sun at the time is progressing toward, it's not exactly there yet, it's trine to Jupiter. And this is an event or a period of time that all of his liberal causes could come to the forefront. Mercury is progressed Mercury is, where is it here? Way up there. Progressed Mercury is sextile to the natal Uranus. And I think that that's timely, that it indicates that things were nip and tuck, because Mercury is also square to Saturn. So there were deniers, and then there was the golden opportunity to get done what he wanted to get done with Uranus and the square to Saturn. And this was probably a nip and tuck battle. In fact, it's quite a remarkable thing that healthcare got passed at all, because that it had going all the way back to Roosevelt. They had tried to pass healthcare. Nobody had been able to do it. Let's see. The moon by progression is opposite to Pluto. Here, moon, where's the moon? Progress moon. Well, let's find Pluto. All right, here's the progressed moon in the first house opposite to Pluto. Meaning to say that this was not an easy event to have come to pass. Now, are the sextile square of progressed Mercury and the progression of the moon opposite to Pluto, are they enough to indicate an astrological vindication? I can't say that. It's maybe yes, maybe no. So we have to look to the transits. And we get the same kind of things with the transits. The only transits that there really are is that Neptune is in the nodes. All right, let's get to here's Neptune, and it's conjoined to the dragon's head and opposite the dragon's tail. Conjoined to the dragon's tail, opposite the dragon's head. I don't know enough what that means. It does mean that conditions were kind of iffy, Neptune in the first house, but I do not have enough experience with transits of outer planets to the nodes. I have experience with progressions, but I don't have experience with transits. Saturn is the only other planet that makes a transit. Saturn is up here in the 8th house, and it is trine to Jupiter, and it is square to Venus. All right, there's Venus. Here's Venus. Venus is square to Saturn. I don't know. These are fairly strong transits. And I don't know if they are enough to have turned the tide. Mercury, the moon rules the 6th house, which has to do with health. Mars happens to be there. It doesn't form any special transits. And the 8th house is the public coffers. And Saturn being in the 8th house, maybe its transits are enough to have brought it about, to have more liberal spending from the public coffers. Is astrology vindicated? We don't know, because we don't know if this is really a significant event in life, even if we can pin it down, which we really can't. There are a lot of things to indicate that this is a time when things are there for a liberal passage of bills and things like that. We don't know for certain. All right, let's move quickly on to the next one. The next one is Donald Trump. Okay. We want to look at this horoscope. Again, the central horoscope is the natal. The Sun is conjoined to the dragon's head. This indicates that he's likely to have a very fortunate life. And it means that he was born probably near to an eclipse. An eclipse of the moon, because if we look at the moon is down here in the fourth house, and it's just opposite the sun. And so the oppositions are up and down kinds of affairs, and the sun is in Gemini, and that's an up and down kind of a sign in the first place. It's quite variable. So being born after an eclipse of the moon, it would be very erratic and inconsistent type of person. So even though there is good fortune from the sun where it is at, it's pretty positive altogether. And the sun forms only one aspect, and it is a sextile to Mars. And the Sun-Mars combinations are very vigorous, very, I wouldn't even say attacking, but there's certainly one that they're going to take vigorous, straightforward action. He's not going to sit back on anything. And this describes him pretty well. He wants immediate decisions, and he wants things over with quickly. He has the sun rules the ascendant, and he wants to see himself as an authority, and he wants to do things on his own sake. The Mercury in the natal chart is square to Neptune. There's Neptune, there's Mercury. This is somebody that is confused, mentally confused about a lot of things. And I think that this is the source of many of his lies. Historically, among most astrologers, Gemini is considered the penultimate or the ultimate liar's sign. And so this indicates more of his likelihood to lying. And he has also the Uranus in the 10th house trine to Jupiter. And we said that 3 presidents in a row who were born in 3 months in a row, in August is when Bill Clinton was born, and in the same year, in July, George Bush was born, and in the same year, in June, is when Donald Trump is born. And they all have this trine between Uranus and Jupiter. And especially with Uranus in the 10th house, this argues for popularity. Bill Clinton had it near the midheaven, which also argues for popularity. I believe George Bush had it also. I don't want to bring the chart back up again, but so we can see this defines the natal chart. That's a pretty accurate picture of the man. Now the man himself is, the horoscope is what he works through, but the man himself, I have to state this, that I think that the man is insane. I think that he has this wonderful horoscope which is playing out, but I don't know how much he is in control of himself. You know, there are things that you can set in motion and lose control of. And the archetype of a human life that can be described that way, that a person can set a life going and not be in touch with it. All right. The time that I chose the bankruptcy of one of his several bankruptcies. I think he had 3 bankruptcies in life. I think this is the one that his casino in Atlantic City went bankrupt. We know that the inauguration didn't produce anything significant. Now let's see if this bankruptcy does. If we look at the progressions, the sun is progressed. Where's the sun here? All right. The sun is progressed sextile to Mercury. Now, would that do, how would the sun Mercury fit into a bankruptcy? It doesn't make sense, except if you know how bankruptcy works. In bankruptcy, you don't have to pay your debts. And I think that even without bankruptcies, Donald Trump is famous for not paying his bills. Even his attorney who defends and protects him, he stiffs. He's done this several times. So we can't rule out the sun being progressed to Mercury. Venus by progression, let's see if we can find it. Venus is down here by progression, is square to Saturn. And Venus rules wealth and things like that. And this would be somebody who would be down on wealth. That is an event that it isn't a lead pipe cinch, even though Saturn is involved and Saturn rules lead. It isn't a lead pipe cinch, but it does indicate that there probably is something to vindicate astrology in this. Also, looking at progressions, Jupiter by progression. All right, let's find where Jupiter is here. Jupiter moves extremely slowly, so its progressions are rare, and it is here is progressed, and it is progressed square to Venus. All right, where's the natal Venus? There's the natal Venus right here, and progressed Jupiter is square to it. Yeah. And it's a pretty accurate, it's well within 1 degree. And this describes him. This describes his whole period. Several bankruptcies because he's careless with money. And he's careless with money because he's overly optimistic. And this certainly describes this period, if not this event. If we look at the transits, there are no significant transits of any kind at the time of this bankruptcy. We could look at inner transits and things like that, but I didn't take the time to do that because that's not what we've been doing in the class. So is there enough to vindicate astrology? It's pretty clear. This event is tied down to the Venus square to Saturn by progression, and Jupiter square to Venus through the general period. So I think astrology is vindicated in this. All right. The last one for this evening. This is going to be probably a very short class. We have them once in a while. Okay, and maybe down just a little bit. All right. This is the horoscope of Joseph Biden. The sun in the natal chart conjoins Venus. And that's a lovable kind of person, even though the conjunction is in Scorpio, which is not always a very likable person. But Jupiter trines both the sun and Venus. Now, these are the three most positive planets in the astrological spectrum of planets. And if all three of them are in the most positive aspect, the trine, this is a pretty good indication that this is a likable, happy-go-lucky person. It may be serious from the Scorpio side of it, but he's a genuinely likable person and is positive. And Jupiter brings in the element of extreme liberality. And that's what he is. He was a textbook liberal. Now, his presidency, with one great exception, his presidency has been a pretty good presidency. The one exception is perhaps due to the Jupiter. I think he throwing $1 trillion into the fluid economy to try to overcome the depression that was produced by the pandemic is not, he was an inflationary president. And this is, of course, why the conservatives dislike him. They say, oh, he's the worst president ever because look at the inflation he gave to us. And to conservatives, inflation is an extreme no-no word. It's damning somebody. Mercury is also in this combination, but Mercury is not as strong. It just adds a lot of ability to talk and talk and talk and talk in a positive way. Saturn in the horoscope here, Saturn is sextile to Pluto, and that shows a very conservative side of things. But Pluto is in the 8th house, which is the house of death, which it abstractly rules. It's more than careful, but you have to be careful about how much you say about Pluto in the 8th house, because it indicates death. And Pluto is sextile to Neptune, so between Uranus, where's Uranus here? All right. These all form a combination sextile trine. And Neptune also trines Uranus, but it isn't in the full combination. All right. There, down here is the trine of Uranus. All right. Because Uranus isn't conjoined to Saturn. So this is a pretty positive. All of the outer planets, the four most outermost planets, are together in a favorable sextile trine relationship. They're not all exactly conjoined with, not at all in all of the aspects, but the whole sextile trine business is extremely positive. This is somebody that has a very, very positive life. The only problem is that those outer planets need to be aspected to an inner planet. Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, or Moon, one of those planets has to bring it down to Earth. And that isn't the case. So there is, to some extent, I don't know how you would say it, theoretical pie in the sky of all kinds of extremely positive things in this character that don't have something to bring them down to earth. Though becoming a president is a pretty positive thing, and having been a senator for so many years. All right, we want to look at an event that was significant in his life, and determine whether it really was significant astrologically and whether astrology is true. Now, quite early in his tenure as a senator, his wife was in a horrible automobile accident. His wife and daughter died, and the two boys, the two sons, which were also in the car, did not die. Though they did manage to get him into trouble in recent days. All right. Oh, come on. The sun, by progression, forms a semi-sextile with Venus. I don't know what that means. Could that mean something, loss of love? I don't know. Venus, by progression, is in what is called a yod. That is, it trines Saturn and it trines Pluto. Yes, here we have Saturn and Pluto, which are in sextile, in a fairly close sextile, and by progression, Venus is in a yod formation. It performs 150 degrees aspect. The yod has been traditionally called by astrologers the finger of fate. And with the two darkest planets, and one of them being in the house of death, this certainly looks like a fated, dark, negative event. Yods, by progression, don't hang on long, but they don't have to if there is devastation that comes from them. This is it indicates a dark period, but it doesn't give the exact time. Now, the progressed moon, where's the progressed moon here? The progressed moon isn't doing anything at the time. So the progressed moon couldn't possibly have been the trigger for the event. I didn't look in great detail for the trigger. The other thing I wanted to look at among the progressions is Mars by progression is conjoined, Mars is conjoined the ascendant, and that means things like accidents or extreme rash events happening are a possibility. And when we look at the transit, the Neptune is there also, and the psychological effect of a Mars and Neptune transit on the ascendant, losing your wife and your daughter, this is very, very strongly a vindication, both from the progressions with the yod and from the progression of Mars to the ascendant at the same time that Neptune is conjoined the ascendant. Mercury by transit is, Mars by transit is conjoined to Mercury in the 12th house, indicating some kind of sudden destiny factor, 12th house being destiny. Is this a vindication of astrology, and does it indicate what occurred in the life of Joseph Biden? Very clearly, yes. This is a lead pipe cinch for determining the accuracy. All right. That's as far as we are going to go this evening. It's a short class. I have to do that once in a while. I wanted to clear this up for a follow-through, but I didn't want to string it out too long and make it too much of a class. Where we go from here is we go back to periods in life. And the thing we're going to pick up something that we left lay a couple years ago, and we're going to talk about climacterices. Climacterices are 7-year periods of life, and we're going to look at them, and then we're going to try to put this all together and come to a conclusion about the focusing from the most broad, looking at life in halves, first half and second half, down to looking at events happening on days. And we're going to look in, after we look at the climacterices, we're going to look at final triggers, things that trigger events if you can find them. That's as far as we're going for this evening. Thank you very, very much.